Ethan Cole stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back, as he waited for Captain Monroe to finish speaking. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the ship's ventilation system. Ethan had been on duty for 3 hours already, and his legs were starting to ache from standing still for so long. But he didn't complain. Complaining wasn't something Ethan did often. He was a guard, and guards followed orders without question. Captain Monroe glanced up from the datapad in his hand, his sharp eyes locking onto Ethan's face. "You've been selected for a special assignment," the captain said, his tone serious but not unkind. Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the words. Special assignments weren't common for someone like him. He was just a regular guard, one of many aboard the interstellar diplomatic vessel Stellar Horizon. What could possibly make him stand out? "What kind of assignment, sir?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice steady. His mind raced with possibilities. Was he being sent to another part of the ship? Or maybe even to a different station entirely? He had heard rumors about high-profile visitors arriving soon, but he hadn't paid much attention to them. Rumors were just rumors, after all. The captain leaned back in his chair, tapping the edge of the datapad against the desk. "We're hosting Princess Leora of the Velith Empire. She's here to negotiate trade agreements and discuss potential alliances between her people and ours." He paused, letting the weight of the statement sink in. Ethan nodded slowly. The Velith were known across the galaxy for their advanced technology and enigmatic culture. Meeting one of their leaders would be a rare honor, or so he thought until the next part came. "You'll be assigned to ensure her safety while she's aboard," Captain Monroe continued. "Specifically, you'll be stationed outside her private quarters during her stay." Ethan frowned slightly. Private quarters? That sounded straightforward enough. Standing watch outside someone's room didn't seem particularly challenging. But then again, this wasn't just anyone. It was an alien princess. And if there was one thing Ethan knew about aliens, it was that they often had customs and practices that were completely foreign to humans. "Understood, sir," Ethan replied, masking his uncertainty with professionalism. "Is there anything specific I need to know about the princess or her preferences?" Captain Monroe handed him the datapad, which now displayed a brief dossier on Princess Leora. Ethan scanned the information quickly. Her shimmering skin, bioluminescent, in certain lights, was mentioned, along with her preference for solitude during certain rituals. There was also a note about her bathing chamber, a sacred space in her culture where no unauthorized personnel were allowed to enter. "Your primary responsibility will be to monitor access to her quarters," Captain Monroe explained. "No one enters without her permission." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said firmly, though a flicker of unease settled in his stomach. Bathing chambers? Sacred spaces? This was definitely going to be more complicated than guarding a door dot later that day. Ethan found himself standing outside the designated suite, his posture rigid as he tried to prepare himself mentally for whatever lay ahead. The door slid open moments later, revealing Princess Leora herself. Ethan straightened instinctively, his eyes widening as he took in her appearance for the first time. She was tall, nearly matching his height, with smooth, iridescent skin that seemed to glow softly under the corridor lights. Her hair flowed like liquid silver down her back, and her eyes, large and almond-shaped, were a striking shade of violet. She wore a flowing gown that shimmered as she moved, giving her an almost ethereal presence. For a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. He had seen pictures of Velith before, of course, but none of them had prepared him for the reality of standing face to face with one of their royals. She exuded an aura of calm authority, yet there was also a warmth in her gaze that put him slightly at ease. "Guard," she said, her voice melodic and clear. "I am Princess Leora. You are to be my protector during my stay." "Yes, Your Highness," Ethan replied, bowing his head respectfully. "My name is Ethan Cole. I'll do everything in my power to ensure your safety." Leora tilted her head slightly, studying him with curiosity. "You may call me Leora. Formal titles are unnecessary among those who serve together." Ethan hesitated, unsure whether addressing her so casually was appropriate, but he nodded anyway. As you wish, Leora. A small smile played on her lips, and she gestured for him to follow her inside. Come, let us discuss what is expected of you. The interior of her quarters was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The walls were adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Soft, glowing orbs floated near the ceiling, casting a gentle light throughout the room. In the center of the space was a large pool filled with what appeared to be warm, translucent liquid. Steam rose from its surface, carrying a faintly floral scent. This is my bathing chamber, Leora explained, gesturing toward the pool. It holds great significance in my culture. It is a place of reflection and renewal. While I am within, no one must disturb me unless there is an emergency. Ethan swallowed hard, suddenly feeling very out of place. I understand. I'll remain outside and ensure no one enters. Leora shook her head gently. That will not be necessary. People believe that solitude is disrespectful during such rituals. You will stand watch nearby, yes, but you must also be present in spirit. It is a sign of trust and unity. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. Present in spirit? What exactly did that mean? Before he could ask, Leora turned away, her gown trailing behind her as she approached the pool. She slipped out of her clothing effortlessly, revealing skin that glowed brighter in the dim light. Ethan averted his eyes immediately, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. I will begin shortly, Leora said, her tone calm and matter-of-fact. Prepare yourself, Ethan. This ritual requires participation not physically, but emotionally. Be open to learning. And with that, she stepped into the pool, disappearing beneath the surface for a brief moment before resurfacing gracefully. Ethan stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. All he could think about was how unprepared he felt for this strange and unexpected role. But as he watched Leora close her eyes and lean back in the water, a sense of determination washed over him. Whatever this assignment entailed, he would give it his best effort. After all, he reminded himself, he was a guard, and guards adapted to any situation thrown their way, even ones involving alien princesses and sacred baths. Ethan didn't know how long he stood there, frozen in place, as Princess Leora floated peacefully in the glowing pool. The room was quiet, except for the soft sound of water lapping against the edges of the bath. He tried to focus on anything, but the fact that he was standing in an alien princess's private bathing chamber. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the shimmering walls and floating orbs of light. It all felt surreal, like he had stepped into another world entirely. Leora opened her eyes after a while, her violet gaze meeting his. Ethan quickly looked away, feeling awkward and out of place. You seem uneasy, she said, her voice calm and soothing. Is something troubling you? No, Your Highness, Leora, Ethan stammered, correcting himself at the last moment. I'm just not used to this kind of situation. Leora tilted her head slightly, studying him with curiosity. What do you mean? Well, Ethan began, struggling to find the right words. Back on Earth, we don't usually have guards standing watch during private moments like this. It's different. Leora smiled faintly, as if she found his discomfort amusing. Different does not always mean bad, Ethan. In my culture, having someone present during such rituals is a sign of trust. It means I value your presence and see you as more than just a protector. Ethan nodded slowly, though he wasn't entirely sure he understood. Trust was a big word, especially when it came from someone like her. She was royalty, a being from a distant planet with customs far removed from anything he had ever known. How could she possibly trust him? I appreciate your explanation, Ethan said carefully, but I still feel like I don't belong here. You do belong, Leora replied, her tone firm yet gentle. Every action has meaning, Ethan. Even yours. Standing here, watching over me, shows that you are willing to step outside your comfort zone. That is something my people admire." Her words made Ethan pause. He hadn't thought about it that way before. To him, this assignment was just another duty, something he had been ordered to do. But now, hearing Leora speak, he realized there might be more to it. Maybe she really did see him as more than just a guard. "Thank you," Ethan said finally, his voice quieter than usual. "I'll try to keep that in mind," Leora nodded, satisfied. "Good. Now, tell me about yourself, Ethan. What is life like for humans on your planet?" The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him about Earth before, at least not like this. Most aliens he encountered were either too busy or too focused on their own agendas to care about human culture. But Leora seemed genuinely interested. "It's complicated," Ethan admitted. "Earth is full of different people, places, and ideas. Some parts are peaceful, others are chaotic. We're always trying to figure things out, I guess." Leora listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "And what about you? Are you peaceful or chaotic?" Ethan chuckled nervously. "I'd say I'm somewhere in between. I like order, but sometimes life throws curveballs. You know?" "I understand," Leora said, her smile widening. "Curveballs can be challenging, but they also teach us valuable lessons." Their conversation continued like this for a while, with Leora asking questions and Ethan answering them as best he could. He told her about his childhood growing up in a small town, his decision to join the military, and his hopes for the future. In return, Leora shared stories about her homeworld, a place filled with towering crystal cities and vast oceans that glowed at night. She spoke of festivals where music and dance brought entire communities together, and a quiet moment spent. Under the twin moons of her planet dot as they talked, Ethan began to relax. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a sense of curiosity. He found himself wanting to learn more about Leora and her people. For all their differences, they weren't so unlike humans in some ways. They valued connection, trust, and understanding things. Ethan could relate to Dot at one point. Leora reached for a small vial resting on the edge of the pool. She poured its contents into the water, creating ripples that sparkled like tiny stars. "This is essence of Luma," she explained. "It helps purify the body and mind." Ethan watched in fascination as the liquid spread across the surface of the pool. "Does it work?" he asked, half joking. Lior, a laugh softly, the sound musical and warm. "It depends on how open you are to its effects. Would you like to try?" Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to say. He didn't want to offend her, but the idea of stepping into the pool felt like crossing a line he wasn't ready to cross. "I think I'll pass," he said, forcing a smile. "But thank you for offering." Leora nodded, seemingly unfazed by his refusal. Perhaps another time. They fell silent for a moment, the only sound the gentle movement of the water. Ethan glanced around the room again, noticing details he hadn't seen before. The patterns on the walls seemed to pulse. Faintly, almost like they were alive. The glowing orbs above shifted positions, casting new shadows across the floor. "Do you ever get homesick?" Ethan asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Leora's expression softened. "Sometimes. Being away from my people can be difficult. But I remind myself why I'm here, to build bridges and create opportunities for peace. That gives me strength." "That's admirable," Ethan said honestly. "I don't know if I could handle that kind of responsibility." "You underestimate yourself," Leora replied, her voice steady. "You carry responsibilities every day, Ethan. Protecting others, making sacrifices, it takes courage. Do not forget that." Her words lingered in his mind, leaving him with a strange mix of pride and humility. He had never thought of himself as particularly brave or selfless. To him, he was just doing his job. But hearing Leora describe him that way made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was capable of more than he realized. Eventually, Leora rose from the pool, wrapping herself in a silken robe that shimmered like moonlight. Ethan turned his back instinctively, giving her privacy as she dried off and dressed. When she was ready, she approached him, her steps light and graceful. "Thank you for staying, Ethan," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm and reassuring. "Your presence means more than you know." Ethan swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. "I'm glad I could help," he managed to say. "If you need anything else, just let me know." "I will," Leora promised. "For now, rest. You've earned it." With that, she walked past him and disappeared into another part of her quarters, leaving Ethan alone in the bathing chamber. He took a deep breath, letting the weight of everything sink in. This assignment was turning out to be far more than he had anticipated, and far more meaningful than he had imagined. The next few days passed in a blur for Ethan. Each morning, he reported to Princess Leora's quarters, standing watch as she went about her daily routines. Their interactions became more natural, though Ethan still felt a lingering sense of unease whenever he was near her bathing chamber. He couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't fully belong there, no matter how many times Leora reassured him otherwise. One evening, as Ethan stood outside the bathing chamber door, he heard muffled sounds coming from within. At first, he thought it might just be the water moving or the hum of the glowing orbs overhead. But then the noise grew louder soft splashes, followed by what sounded like a sharp intake of breath. His instincts kicked in immediately. Was something wrong? Should he check on her? Ethan hesitated, torn between respecting her privacy and ensuring her safety. Finally, he knocked gently on the door. "Leora?" He called out, his voice steady but cautious. "Is everything okay?" There was a moment of silence before Leora's voice responded. "Ethan, come in." His heart raced as he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room looked much the same as it had during their previous encounters. The glowing walls, the floating lights, the pool filled with shimmering liquid. But this time, Leora was sitting at the edge of the pool, her robe draped loosely around her shoulders. Her expression was calm, though there was a hint of concern in her violet eyes. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, glancing around the room. "I heard noises and thought you might need help." Leora shook her head slightly. "No, I am unharmed. But your concern is appreciated." She paused, studying him carefully. "Tell me, Ethan, why did you hesitate before entering?" I wasn't sure if it was appropriate," Ethan admitted, shifting uncomfortably. "You said this is a sacred space, and I didn't want to intrude." "You were right to consider my customs," Leora said, nodding. "But remember what I told you earlier. Your presence here is not an intrusion. It is a sign of trust. And tonight, I need you to trust me as well." Ethan frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Leora stood up slowly, her movements deliberate and graceful. She gestured toward the pool. "In my culture, certain rituals require companionship, not just physically, but emotionally. Tonight, I ask you to join me in the bath." Ethan's eyes widened in shock. "Join you in the bath?" He repeated, his voice trembling slightly. The idea felt so foreign, so unexpected, that he couldn't process it right away. "Yes," Leora said simply. "It is a tradition meant to strengthen bonds and foster understanding. You have shown respect for my customs, and now I wish to share this experience with you." Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. His mind raced with thoughts of propriety, duty, and the potential consequences of accepting such an invitation. What would Captain Monroe say if he found out? How would the rest of the crew react? And most importantly, how could he possibly justify stepping into the pool with an alien princess? I don't know if I can," Ethan stammered finally, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. "This isn't something I'm used to," Leora's expression softened. "I understand your hesitation. This is unfamiliar to you, and that is okay. But sometimes growth comes from stepping outside our comfort zones. Will you try, Ethan, for both of us?" Her words struck a chord deep within him. He had spent his entire life following rules, sticking to what was expected of him. Rarely had he allowed himself to take risks or embrace uncertainty. Yet here was Leora, offering him a chance to do exactly that, to break free from his rigid mindset and experience something truly unique. Okay, Ethan said quietly, surprising even himself. I'll try. A small smile spread across Leora's face. Thank you, Ethan. That means more than you realize. She guided him to the edge of the pool, explaining the significance of each step along the way. Remove your shoes and uniform, she instructed gently. They will only weigh you down in the water. Ethan complied, setting his boots and jacket aside. Beneath them, he wore a simple undershirt and trousers. As he slipped those off as well, he felt exposed and vulnerable, but Leora's reassuring. Presence helped calm his nerves. The essence of Luma will guide you, Leora said, pouring another vial of the glowing liquid into the pool. Let it wash away any doubts or fears. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the water. It was warm, almost soothing, and the sensation surprised him. He sank down until he was seated beside Leora, their reflections rippling together on the surface of the pool. This feels strange, Ethan admitted after a moment, his voice barely above a whisper. Strange can also be beautiful, Leora replied, her tone gentle. Focus on the warmth of the water, the light around us. Let yourself be present in this moment. Ethan closed his eyes, trying to follow her advice. Slowly, the tension in his body began to fade. The glowing patterns on the walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, creating a sense of harmony he hadn't felt before. Do you feel it? Leora asked softly. Feel what? Ethan murmured, opening his eyes. The connection, she said. Between us, between all living things. It is fragile, yet powerful. When we embrace it, we become stronger, not just individually, but together. Ethan didn't fully understand what she meant, but he didn't need to. In that moment, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known was possible. For the first time since arriving on the stellar horizon, he wasn't thinking about orders, protocols, or consequences. He was simply there, sharing an experience with someone who trusted him completely. As they sat in silence, Ethan realized something important. This wasn't just about cultural exchange or diplomatic relations. It was about breaking down barriers between species, between worlds, and even within himself. And though he still had much to learn, he knew one thing for certain. He would never forget this night. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a strange sense of calm. He could remember the last time he had slept so deeply or felt so at ease. For a brief moment, as he lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling, he wondered if the previous night had been a dream. But then he remembered the warmth of the water, the glow of the walls, and Leora's voice guiding him through the ritual. It had been real, all of it. As he got dressed and prepared for the day, Ethan found himself replaying the events in his mind. Joining Leora in the bath had been one of the most unusual experiences of his life, but it had also been surprisingly meaningful. He hadn't expected to feel such a strong connection, not just to her, but to something bigger than himself. It was hard to put into words, but the memory of it stayed with him, like a quiet reassurance that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. When Ethan arrived at Leora's quarters later that day, she greeted him with a warm smile. Good morning, Ethan, she said, her tone light and friendly. How are you feeling? I'm good, Ethan replied, though there was a hint of nervousness in his voice. Last night, it was different. I've never done anything like that before. Leora nodded, her violet eyes filled with understanding. It is natural to feel uncertain after stepping outside your comfort zone. But tell me, did you find any value in the experience? Ethan hesitated, searching for the right words. I think so. It made me realize how much I don't know about your culture, and maybe even about myself. I've always followed rules and stuck to what's expected of me, but last night, it felt like I was breaking free from that, just a little. That is the purpose of the ritual, Leora explained, to open our minds and hearts to new possibilities. You embraced it well, Ethan. I am proud of you. Her praise caught him off guard, and he felt a flicker of pride. Thank you, he said, softly. I wasn't sure if I'd done the right thing, but hearing you say that, it helps. They spent the rest of the morning talking, just as they had during their earlier encounters. Leora shared more stories about her homeworld, describing its vast landscapes and vibrant festivals. She spoke of the challenges her people face, conflicts over resources, disagreements among leaders, and how those struggles shaped their values. In return, Ethan told her about Earth's diversity, its mix of cultures and traditions. He described simple pleasures like watching the sunset or sharing a meal with friends, things he had taken for granted until now. Their conversations flowed easily, each word building on the trust they had formed the night before. Ethan began to see Leora not just as an alien princess, but as a person with hopes, fears, and dreams similar to his own. And Leora, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in learning about him. At one point, she asked, "What do you hope to achieve in your life, Ethan? Do you have a goal you are working toward?" Ethan thought about it for a moment. "I guess I want to make a difference," he said finally. "Not in a big, world-changing way, but in small ways, like helping people or protecting them when they can't protect themselves." "That is noble," Leora said, her expression thoughtful. "Many believe greatness comes from grand gestures, but true impact often lies in the quiet moments, the ones no one else sees. You remind me of that." Her words stayed with him long after their conversation ended. He had never considered his work as anything extraordinary, but hearing Leora describe it that way made him look at himself differently. Maybe he wasn't just a guard following orders. Maybe he was part of something larger, something that mattered. Later, that afternoon, as Ethan stood watch outside Leora's quarters, he noticed a group of crew members walking by. They were whispering to each other, their voices low but audible enough for him to catch snippets of their conversation. "Did you hear about Cole?" one of them said, glancing in Ethan's direction. "Word is, he's been spending a lot of time with the alien princes." "Yeah, I heard that too," another replied. "Some say he's gone soft, letting her pull him into her weird customs." Ethan clenched his jaw, trying to ignore the comments. He knew rumors spread quickly aboard the ship, but he hadn't expected this kind of attention. Still, he reminded himself that what he did was between him, Leora. Their bond wasn't something others could understand unless they experienced it themselves. When Leora emerged from her quarters later, she must have noticed the tension in his posture. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "It's nothing," Ethan said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just some idle chatter from the crew. Nothing to worry about." Leora frowned. "Idle chatter can become harmful if left unchecked. If anyone questions your loyalty or professionalism because of our interactions, I will address it personally." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You don't need to do that. I can handle it." "But you shouldn't have to," Leora countered. "This mission is about unity, not division. If my presence causes trouble for you, then we must confront it together." Her determination surprised him. He had expected her to brush off the issue, but instead, she seemed ready to stand by him. It was another reminder of how much she valued their connection. That evening, Captain Monroe summoned Ethan to his office. The captain's expression was stern as he gestured for Ethan to sit down. "There have been reports about your behavior," Monroe began, his tone measured but serious. "Specifically, your involvement with Princess Leora. Care to explain yourself?" Ethan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Sir, my actions have been guided by respect for her culture and her wishes. Everything I've done has been within the scope of my duties." Monroe leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan closely. "Respect is one thing, Cole. Fraternizing is another. We're here to ensure a successful alliance, not create distractions." "I understand, sir," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady. "But I believe my relationship with Leora has strengthened that alliance. She trusts me, and I trust her." Isn't that what diplomacy is about? The captain sighed, rubbing his temples. You're treading dangerous ground, son. Just be careful. One misstep could jeopardize everything we've worked for. Yes, sir, Ethan said, standing up. I'll keep that in mind. As he left the office, Ethan felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He knew the captain was right. There were risks involved. But he also knew that what he shared with Leora was worth fighting for. Together, they were building bridges that might otherwise never exist. And if that meant facing criticism or doubt, then so be it. When Ethan returned to Leora's quarters, she greeted him with a knowing look. You spoke with Captain Monroe, didn't you? Ethan nodded. He's worried about appearances, about what the crew might think. And what do you think? Leora asked gently. I think. Ethan paused, choosing his words carefully. I think we're doing the right thing. Not just for us, but for everyone. If we can show that trust and understanding are possible, then maybe others will follow our example. Leora smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then let us continue, Ethan. Let us prove that unity is stronger than fear. And with that, they moved forward together. The following days were a mix of challenges and quiet moments for Ethan. Word of his close relationship with Princess Leora had spread further among the crew, and it seemed like everyone had an opinion. Some whispered behind his back, calling him reckless or naive. Others avoided eye contact altogether, as if being associated with him might bring trouble. But there were also a few who approached him directly. Curious about what it was like to interact so closely with an alien dignitary, Ethan tried to ignore the gossip as best he could, focusing instead on his duties and his growing bond with Leora. Each day brought new conversations, new insights into her culture, and new opportunities to reflect on his own place in the universe. He found himself looking forward to their time together, even though he knew the situation was far from simple. One afternoon, as Ethan stood guard outside Leora's quarters, she invited him inside for tea, a ritual she said was meant to strengthen bonds between friends. The room was warm and inviting, filled with soft light from the glowing orbs overhead. A small table sat in the center, adorned with delicate cups and a steaming pot of fragrant liquid. Please, sit, Leora said, gesturing toward the cushions arranged around the table. This is a drink from my homeworld. It is called Valith Blossom Tea. I think you will enjoy it. Ethan hesitated for a moment before lowering himself onto one of the cushions. He wasn't used to sitting cross-legged on the floor, but he didn't want to appear rude. Leora poured the tea into 2 cups, handing one to him with a smile. It smells different, Ethan said cautiously, taking a small sip. The flavor was unlike anything he'd ever tasted, sweet yet earthy, with a hint of something floral. It is made from flowers that grow only in the highlands of my planet, Leora explained. They are rare and precious, much like friendship. Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him, not just from the tea, but from her words. Thank you for sharing this with me. You are welcome, Leora replied, her tone gentle. Friendship is not something my people take lightly. It requires effort, patience, and trust. You have shown all 3, Ethan. Her praise made him feel proud, but also a little uneasy. I'm just doing my job, he said, shrugging modestly. Protecting you, following orders. No, Leora interrupted, shaking her head slightly. What we have goes beyond duty. You have opened your mind to my customs, even when they felt strange to you. That takes courage. Ethan looked down at his cup, unsure how to respond. Courage wasn't a word he associated with himself. To him, he was just a guard trying to do the right thing. But hearing Leora describe him that way made him wonder if maybe he was capable of more than he realized. Their conversation drifted to lighter topics after that, with Leora asking about Earth's traditions and foods. Ethan told her about holidays like Thanksgiving, where families gather to share meals and give thanks. He described the taste of pumpkin pie and the sound of laughter filling a cozy home. Leora listened intently, her eyes wide with fascination. That sounds beautiful, she said softly. Your world has much to offer, Ethan. Perhaps someday I will visit it myself. I'd like that, Ethan replied, surprising himself with how sincere he sounded. The thought of showing Leora his world, the places he loved, the people he cared about filled him with a sense of hope. Maybe their connection could lead to something greater, something that bridged both their worlds. As the days passed, Ethan and Leora continued to navigate the complexities of their relationship. They faced subtle resistance from some members of the crew who still viewed their closeness with suspicion. But they also received support from unexpected sources. Captain Monroe, though initially wary, began to see the positive impact of their bond. During a briefing, he acknowledged Ethan's efforts, praising him for fostering mutual understanding between humans and Valith. It seems your approach has earned Princess Leora's trust, Monroe said during one meeting. That is no small feat, Cole. Keep it up. Ethan nodded, grateful for the recognition but aware that the real credit belonged to Leora. Without her openness and willingness to connect, none of this would have been possible. One evening, as they prepared for another diplomatic session, Leora turned to Ethan with a serious expression. Tomorrow will be important, she said. We will meet with Earth's ambassadors to discuss the terms of our alliance. I want you by my side, not just as my protector, but as my companion. Ethan felt a pang of nervousness. Standing alongside Leora in front of such influential figures was daunting, but he couldn't refuse her request. Of course, he said, his voice steady despite his unease. Whatever you need. Leora placed a hand on his arm, her touch reassuring. You have already given me so much, Ethan. Your strength, your honesty, your willingness to learn. Together, we can show others that unity is possible. The next morning, Ethan dressed carefully, choosing his uniform with extra care. As he entered the meeting room, he noticed the tension in the air. The ambassadors sat at a long table, their expression serious and guarded. Leora stood at the center, her presence commanding attention. When she gestured for Ethan to join her, he stepped forward, standing slightly behind her as a sign of respect. The discussions began, with each side presenting their views and concerns. At times, the conversation grew heated, with disagreements threatening to derail progress. But whenever tensions rose, Leora would glance at Ethan, drawing strength from his calm demeanor. In turn, Ethan focused on maintaining his composure, reminding himself of everything they had worked toward. At one point, an ambassador raised a skeptical eyebrow, addressing Leora directly. Princess, why do you place so much trust in this? Human, surely your advisors are better suited to guide you. Leora's response was firm and unwavering. Trust is not given lightly, nor is it based on titles or positions. Ethan has proven himself through his actions, his respect for my culture, and his commitment to our shared goals. He is not just a guard, he is a friend. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat, overwhelmed by her faith in him. For the first time, he truly understood the depth of their connection. It wasn't just about rituals or cultural exchange, it was about believing in each other, even when others doubted. By the end of the session, the ambassadors agreed to move forward with the alliance, citing Leora's leadership and Ethan's role in bridging the gap between their peoples. As the meeting concluded, Captain Monroe approached them, a rare smile on his face. Well done, both of you, he said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. You've set an example for all of us. Ethan exchanged a glance with Leora, who smiled warmly. They had come a long way since their first awkward encounter. What had started as a simple assignment had grown into something profound, a testament to the power of trust, understanding, and friendship. As they left the meeting room together, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them side by side. And in that moment, he realized that sometimes the most meaningful connections are the ones we least expect. The days following the diplomatic meeting were a whirlwind of activity aboard the Stellar Horizon. News of the alliance agreement spread quickly, and while many celebrated the breakthrough, not everyone was pleased. Some crew members remained skeptical about Ethan's role in the negotiations, questioning whether his closeness to Princess Leora had clouded his judgment. Others simply resented the attention he was receiving, believing that his actions had overstepped the boundaries of his position. Ethan tried to ignore the whispers and sidelong glances, but it wasn't easy. He had always prided himself on being professional and disciplined, qualities that earned him respect among his peers. Now, however, he felt like he was walking a tightrope, balancing between fulfilling his duty and maintaining the bond he shared with Leora. The tension weighed heavily on him, even as he reminded himself that their work was important, not just for Earth, but for both species. One evening, after a long day of meetings and preparations, Ethan found himself standing outside Leora's quarters. His mind was racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Would they be able to maintain the progress they had made? Or would resistance from others derail everything? Before he could knock, the door slid open, revealing Leora. She looked at him with concern etched across her face. "You seem troubled," she said softly. "Come inside." Ethan hesitated for a moment before stepping into the room. It felt familiar now, the glowing walls, the floating orbs, the sense of calm that seemed to envelop him whenever he entered. Leora gestured for him to sit, offering him a cup of violet blossom tea without asking. He accepted it gratefully, letting the warmth of the drink soothe him. "What is on your mind, Ethan?" she asked, sitting across from him. Her violet eyes were filled with kindness, urging him to speak freely. "It's complicated," Ethan began, setting the cup down carefully. "Some people don't understand why I'm so close to you. They think it's inappropriate or risky. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if they're right." Leora listened intently, nodding slightly. Fear often leads to misunderstanding. When something is unfamiliar, people react by pushing it away. But fear does not have to dictate our choices. "I know," Ethan replied, rubbing his temples. "But it's hard to ignore when it feels like everyone is watching, waiting for me to make a mistake." "You are not alone in this," Leora said firmly. "We are facing these challenges together. Your strength inspires me, Ethan. Do not let doubt take that away from you." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He had spent so much time worrying about what others thought that he had almost forgotten why he started down this path in the first place. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building trust, fostering understanding, and creating something meaningful. "Thank you," Ethan said finally, his voice steadier than before. "I needed to hear that." Leora smiled, reaching out to touch his hand briefly. "Remember, unity requires effort from both sides. You have given so much of yourself to this mission. Let us continue to show others what is possible." Later that week, Captain Monroe called Ethan into his office once again. This time, the atmosphere was different, less confrontational, more reflective. The captain leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about what you said during our last conversation," Monroe began, "about how your relationship with Princess Leora has strengthened the alliance. At first, I wasn't sure I agreed, but seeing the results, well, it's hard to argue with success." Ethan nodded, unsure where this was leading. "Sir," Monroe sighed, folding his hands on the desk. "Here's the thing, Cole. Diplomacy isn't just about treaties and agreements. It's about connection, about finding common ground. What you and Leora have done building trust, breaking down barriers, that's diplomacy at its core." Ethan felt a swell of pride, though he kept his emotions in check. "I didn't do it alone, sir. Leora deserves most of the credit." "Maybe so," Monroe conceded, "but you played a key role. That's why I want to propose something. If you're willing, I'd like you to stay assigned to Leora for the remainder of her visit and perhaps beyond. We need someone who can represent Earth's values while continuing to foster this partnership." The offer caught Ethan off guard. Staying with Leora meant committing to a path that was still uncertain, fraught with challenges and potential criticism. But it also meant staying true to what he believed in. "I'll do it," Ethan said without hesitation. If Leora agrees, then yes, I'll stay. Monroe smiled faintly, clearly relieved. Good. I'll inform her and make the necessary arrangements. Just tread carefully, Cole. Not everyone will be happy about this decision. I understand, sir, Ethan replied. But I won't back down. When Ethan told Leora about the captain's proposal, she seemed genuinely pleased. This is wonderful news, she said, her voice filled with warmth. It means we can continue to work together, to deepen the bonds we have formed. There will still be challenges, Ethan cautioned. People may not agree with this choice. Let them disagree, Leora said, her tone firm yet gentle. What matters is that we believe in what we are doing. Trust in ourselves and in each other. Over the next few days, Ethan and Leora worked closely to prepare for the final stages of her visit. They attended cultural exchanges where humans and Velith shared music, art, and stories. They participated in joint training exercises, demonstrating the value of cooperation in practical ways. And through it all, their connection grew stronger, becoming a symbol of hope for those who witnessed it. One night, as they stood together, on the observation deck overlooking the stars, Leora turned to Ethan with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever wonder what lies beyond this moment? She asked. What the future holds for us for both our peoples? All the time, Ethan admitted. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, like there's so much we don't know. But then I remind myself that every step forward counts. Even the small ones. Leora nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant constellations. Perhaps one day, our worlds will be closer than they are now. Perhaps one day, humans and Velith will walk side by side, learning from each other, growing together. That's a beautiful thought, Ethan said, smiling faintly. And I think we're already on the way there. As they stood in silence, watching the endless expanse of space stretch out before them, Ethan felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together. Because in the end, it wasn't just about two individuals. It was about bridging worlds, forging connections, and proving that unity was always worth fighting for. The final days of Princess Leora's visit passed quickly, filled with ceremonies and farewells. The ship buzzed with activity as preparations were made for her departure. Gifts were exchanged, speeches were given, and promises of continued cooperation were sealed with handshakes and nods of agreement. For Ethan, these moments felt bittersweet. He was proud of what they had accomplished together, but the thought of saying goodbye to Leora weighed heavily on his heart. On the morning of her departure, Ethan stood outside Leora's quarters, waiting to escort her to the docking bay. His uniform was freshly pressed, his posture rigid, but inside he felt anything but composed. This wasn't just another assignment ending, it was the closing chapter of an experience that had changed him in ways he never expected. When the door opened, Leora stepped out, dressed in a flowing gown that shimmered like starlight. Her expression was calm, though there was a hint of sadness in her violet eyes. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly. "Morning, Leora," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. "Are you ready?" She nodded, glancing back at her quarters one. Last time before turning to face him. "I am, but I must admit, leaving feels harder than I anticipated." Ethan swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. "It's been an honor working with you," he said finally. "I'll miss our conversations." "As will I," Leora said, her voice gentle. "You have taught me much about your world and about myself. I hope you feel the same." "I do," Ethan admitted. "You've shown me that trust can exist even in the most unlikely places. That's something I'll carry with me forever." They began walking toward the docking bay, their footsteps echoing softly in the corridor. Along the way, crew members paused to watch them pass, some offering respectful nods, others whispering quietly among themselves. Ethan ignored the stares, focusing instead on the person beside him. For all the challenges they had faced, their bond remained unbroken, a testament to the power of understanding and connection. When they reached the docking bay, Captain Monroe and several ambassadors were already waiting. The air was thick with formality, but beneath it, there was a sense of accomplishment. The alliance between Earth and the Velith Empire was stronger now, thanks in no small part to Ethan and Leora's efforts. Captain Monroe stepped forward, addressing Leora directly. "Your Highness, on behalf of Earth, I thank you for your wisdom and leadership during this mission. We look forward to continuing our partnership." Leora bowed her head graciously. "The honor is mine. Your people have shown great courage and openness, qualities that will serve us well in the future." As the formalities concluded, Leora turned to Ethan, her gaze steady and sincere. "Before I go, I want to say one more thing. You have been more than a guard to me, Ethan. Have been a friend, a companion, and a bridge between our worlds. Do not forget that." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat, but he managed to speak. "And you've been the same for me, Leora. I'll never forget everything we've shared." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the weight of their journey hanging in the silence between them. Then, surprising everyone present, Leora reached out and placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense meaning, a final reminder of the trust they had built together. "Until we meet again," Leora said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Until then," Ethan replied, his own voice thick with emotion. With that, Leora turned and boarded her shuttle, disappearing behind its sleek, metallic doors. Ethan watched as the craft lifted off, its engines humming softly before it vanished into the vastness of space. He stood there for a long time, staring at the empty void where it had been, feeling both loss and gratitude dot in the days that followed. Life aboard the Stellar Horizon returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. Rumors about Ethan and Leora lingered, but they gradually faded as the crew focused on new missions and tasks. Ethan threw himself into his work, finding comfort in routine. Yet, no matter how busy he kept himself, he couldn't shake the memories of his time with Liora. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in the observation deck, Captain Monroe joined him. The older man leaned against the railing, gazing out at the stars. "How are you holding up, Cole?" he asked after a moment. "I'm okay," Ethan replied, shrugging slightly. "Just adjusting." Monroe nodded knowingly. "It's not easy saying goodbye to someone who's made such an impact. But don't forget you did good work here. Better than most could have hoped for." "Thanks, sir," Ethan said, managing a faint smile. "That means a lot." "You earned it," Monroe said firmly. "And who knows? Maybe this won't be the last we hear from Princess Leora. Diplomacy has a way of bringing people back together." Ethan glanced at the captain, surprised by the comment. "Do you really think so?" "It's possible," Monroe replied with a shrug. "Stranger things have happened." The idea brought a flicker of hope to Ethan's heart. He didn't know if or when he would see Leora again, but the possibility was enough to keep him moving forward. Their bond had transcended species, cultures, and expectations. Surely, that kind of connection couldn't simply fade away. As Ethan left the observation deck later that night, he found himself reflecting on everything that had happened, from the awkwardness of their first encounter to the profound moments of trust and understanding they had shared. It had been a journey unlike any other. He had started as a guard assigned to protect an alien dignitary, but along the way, he had become something more: a friend, a partner, a symbol of unity. Standing in the quiet corridor, Ethan realized that while Leora's visit may have ended, its effects would stay with him forever. He had learned to embrace uncertainty, to step outside his comfort zone, and to believe in the power of connection. These lessons weren't just for him. They were for everyone who dared to reach across divides and build bridges. As he walked back to his quarters, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. The road ahead might be uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. He was ready to face it. Because in the end, the bonds we form, no matter how unlikely, are what make us stronger. And somewhere out there among the stars, Leora was carrying those same bonds with her. For now, that was enough.